Okay, thank you, Joey, and we're going to call the work session for the Board of Mayor and Alderman together to order for Tuesday, March the 11th, 2025. We're going to call the roll. Alderman Barnhill.
Present.
Alderman Blanton.
Here.
Alderman Caesar.
Present.
Alderman Peterson.
Here.
Alderman Berger.
Present.
Alderman Brown.
Present.
Vice Mayor Potts is absent. Alderman Baggett.
Present.
Okay, and the mayor's here. One quick announcement for the audience. Typically, these monitors in the center of the room are live and working, and what's displayed, what we're seeing, you're seeing. Well, tonight you're going to have an exercise where you have to look to the sides. So the audience will have to, whatever they're wanting to see as far as presentations will be on those side monitors in the room. For the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, what you'll be seeing will be on your monitors rather than those screens. So I have no citizen comments for items not on the agenda, so we'll continue to work forward and we'll go to the work session discussion items. The first one is a funding request from Franktown Open Hearts for up to $900,000 to cover the cost of required stormwater infrastructure and for Johnson Circle to be deeded to and accepted by the City of Franklin as public right-of-way as part of Franktown's development of a county-owned parcel located on the northeast corner of Johnson Circle and Granberry Street.
Good evening, Mayor and Alderman. Thanks for being here. Chris, before I turn it over to Chris and his team from Franktown Open Hearts, I just want to set the stage that some of that information was in the packet because they have a presentation. The parcel on Johnson Circle, adjacent to the Franklin Housing Authority property, had been looked at several years ago by the county for their archive building. And part of that property in developing it with stormwater related issues in the area and on this site requires some stormwater improvements. And when Chris and his team came in and worked with Jimmy Wiseman and Lance primarily, they looked at trying to provide the green infrastructure and stormwater infrastructure through an open swale on Franklin Housing Authority property. That doesn't work. It can't be engineered. The topography doesn't allow it to occur. So then the alternative was, in working with their team and the city, was to put that improvement in Johnson Circle underground, which would require, if you read the information, for the city to accept Johnson Circle, which the Housing Authority is willing to make happen, and then we would work with Franktown Open Hearts to have that infrastructure put in. The improvement on private property in an open swale would have been, I'm just using a rough number, about $180,000, $190,000 to put it in underground in Johnson Circles, a little better than $700,000, a difference of $650 or give or take a little bit. But that's where we are. Chris and his team would like to talk about the facility that they're going to build to serve our community and their clients, and then we'll open it up for questions and anything else that you'd like to add. But their request there for funds up to $900,000 and that the city eventually take on the right-of-way of Johnson Circle, which will be brought up to city standards from back of curb to back of curb, as we require of other private roads if this improvement goes forward. Chris?
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I was asked before we get to our request, because there are some that are not familiar with Franktown, what we do. And so I was asked to give a very brief 2-3 minute synopsis of what Franktown is, which I will do now. Franktown started 20 years ago, and it was after school and summer programming for some of the inner city impoverished kids here in Franklin. We do several things every day, from educational programming to feeding the kids, But basically, we're wanting to give these kids exposures and opportunities that they otherwise would not be able to have. All of the families we serve are on the free reduced lunch program. A survey from 2 years ago, the average income of the family we serve is $12,563. We have almost 20 of our families making less than $10,000 a year, right here in the heart of Franklin. All of the children we serve, except one, live in a single-parent house. And in fact, almost half of our kids, 47%, do not live with either parent. They're being raised by an older sibling, grandparent, auntie, cousin, whatever, but not being raised by either parent. What we do with them when we have them, two main pillars is educational programming, not just STEM and reading and tutoring, etc., but also business and leadership, 3D printing, robotics, giving these kids some exposures to other ways to learn that they might not get at school. But we also have vocational training, teaching kids to repair automobiles, welding, woodworking, electrical, plumbing. Some of these trades are going to be in short supply soon, and they're going to need people to do those. We're not at all against college. We help them apply for scholarships and grants and fill out FAFSAs, but whether they go to college or to vocation of some sort, they're going to need a work ethic, and that's what we teach most of all. We use incentives to get them to that point, things such as rafting trips and trips to other cities to spend a week if they've earned it. In New York City, Washington, D.C., this past summer, we took them to see the Grand Canyon in Phoenix. Because this is not an entitlement program. It's one where we teach the kids to work. We give them a tool, show them how to use it. And to participate in any of these programs, whether it be trips to TPAC or trips to a Preds game or Titans game, community service is required. So that's another component of our program. We think we are making an impact. I'm proud to say that in the last 9 years that I've been there, 100% of our graduates launch. That's our word, meaning once they graduate high school, they go on to community college, to a 4-year university, to a trade school, apprenticeship, or straight into the job market. But that cycle of generational poverty ends here. Our automotive program, just a couple of highlights. We've given away 73 cars that were donated to us. We taught the kids how to fix them, and then we re-gifted them to a family that didn't have a car or to a graduate that needed transportation to work or to college. And also another highlight was that in 2022, the governor selects a handful of charities, nonprofits across the state, and gives them the Governor's Award of Excellence. And in 2022, he selected Franktown for making a lasting impact in our community. Now on to our requests.
Hello, my name is Brandon Pretty with 906 Studio Architects. Was a Franktown board member from 2018 until 2023, and then I've had the privilege also being the project architect on this project we're going to talk to you about. So I wanted to briefly give an overview of, really what we determined we needed. You heard Chris talk a lot about the many different things Franktown does. Currently, they're doing that. They had different sites all over the place. They put a lot of time and effort into busing kids around, into fuel, into drivers. So when I joined the board, it just so happened the next vision was, hey, a building, that would be great. We put all energies towards programming. So funny how little things like that happen. Had the privilege of learning more about it, programming, and so we determined, we needed a gathering area for meetings and food. We needed a place, a kitchen, to make that food, a large area for games, smaller classrooms for teaching for the classes Chris was talking about, a computer lab, a dance studio, a wood shop, auto repair space, staff space, and then also area for donations for volunteers to come to make that piece easy as well. So armed with that laundry list of items, we went in search of a site in Franklin for a building of 10, 15,000 plus square feet, no small feat. Looked at several different items, or several different places, and then we're really, frankly, there's no better word for it, kind of gifted something by the county where they had a perfect site and a perfect location at 215 Granbury Street. So we looked at that site for a whole lot of reasons that made a whole lot of sense, and then design began. So in October of 2021, Franktown signed a lease with Williamson County for that site. It was a 3-year lease and then a 1-year extension, or the conditions of the lease were 3 years that they needed to start work. They were granted a 1-year extension. So, as that'll show you, we're in a position where we need work to begin by October 2025 or potentially face losing that site. I guess, and Vernon, I think, did a really good job of kind of giving a high-level synopsis of where we are on the site. You look at a site and say, wow, what a beautiful flat site. Well, it's almost too flat. We had some issues with stormwater, in particular with off-site stormwater that currently drains to that swale on the back of the site. Doing that with the building, we spent a lot of time looking at that. We've been looking at the design of this at this point for 2+ years. I think we ultimately determined that swale on the back was infeasible. That brings us to needing some more infrastructure along Johnson Circle that would not only serve our site, honestly, it would primarily serve the other sites, and they would really benefit from that. And I will quickly talk, just to give you a little bit of context of what this, what Vernon was describing, call it a $700,000, give or take, piece of that budget. In 2022, we did our first high-level estimate, so $4.5 million. Revisited that in 2023, $5.2 million. And by the way, these estimates are through our general contractor, Solomon Builders, who's been assisting us for the last couple of years. Again, as this has progressed, obviously everybody knows prices have escalated. Just with the same building over time, we've escalated again, 4.5 million, 5.2 million. We're estimating probably right now 6 million, somewhere between 6 and 6.7 million. So, obviously 700,000 within that, you're talking about 10% plus. So a pretty meaningful piece of that budget. And, when you're talking about a space that's going to serve kids, that's got a real, just got a real impact. If you're putting it into the site, you can't put it into the building, can't put it into programming, all those different things. So that, again, just kind of a pretty high level synopsis of the architecture, the site, pricing, kind of how we got here. And at this point, I'll turn it back over to Chris.
We're here for 3 reasons. We've been stuck here at this phase of the building project for literally over 2 years. Until this domino falls, the others will not fall. Dealing with water that's not just from our property, but from adjacent properties that flow through ours. And we need help. We need Johnson Circle to be dedicated to the city with all the appropriate easements so we can route the water through there and we can get on with our project. We realize that the off-site infrastructure is needed to address this stormwater issue. But a $900,000 price tag is financially devastating to Franktown in this campaign. We're a small nonprofit doing great work, but trying to raise $7.25 million is difficult enough. And I want the money raised to go to those kids, not to stormwater mitigation. And lastly, we need help because time is our enemy. We need to break ground by October to maintain this lease with the county and get on to doing what we need to do with these kids. At the end of the day, this building is going to allow Franktown to work with 2 or 3 times as many kids. This program works. We're changing the trajectory of these kids' lives, not just their lives, but their future families, children, and grandchildren. We break the cycle. We need a building because I'm sick to death of turning away kids that want to come, but we've been at capacity for 7 years. We need to be able to serve more children, and we cannot do this without your help. So I'm coming with hat in hand, begging for some relief, begging for help. We'll answer questions now.
Alderman Baggett, you're recognized.
Thanks. Since this is in Ward 4, and I've been working on this with you all for maybe not the entirety of the 2 years, but for sure at least a year. And I wanted to acknowledge the Franklin Housing Authority here, and they've also been working hand in hand. I would say that this is one of those situations where we have our ordinances and they are in our stormwater requirements, and it doesn't take into account sometimes that these off-site improvements actually does take it. It actually is working just as it should, frankly, our ordinances. But these types of situations come up, and I think that's why we exist, to take a look at certain situations like this. Unique to this is that the other party in which the improvement would help or benefit is another partner of the city's, which is the Franklin Housing Authority. And so at some point, not putting words into Derwin's mouth, but at some point they would come to us if they ever, or us being the city, if they were to redevelop that parcel, which it has not been redeveloped. And I'm certain that this board would consider the cost of infrastructure on that parcel at some future to be determined date to help and assist with that affordable housing redevelopment, that the only stock really that we have in that area. I think that there would no doubt be a request for some sort of infrastructure improvement if history is a tale, right? And that's how we want to support that organization. So you kind of have this, I think, a perfect storm of where you've got two organizations that we support in a variety of ways, and this benefits both in a way that I think it makes sense. And I would be in support of the $900,000. I know that there's some discussion on where that money comes from. I know that the FEMA home raising project currently takes up about $11 million in our capital investment plan, and I don't know if it's going to reach that amount. I doubt it will. So I do think there are some unencumbered funds in our CIP that, along with CDBG funds, that I think the staff had identified, where we could do that over a period of time or work with the applicant. So logistically, how it all pans out, let staff figure that out. But I think I can't see of a better situation where we do something now that helps the Johnson Circle and the Franklin Housing Authority long term, but also helps Franktown in the more immediate in a complete way. Some might say, well, let's pay the difference. But I think that after hearing about this project and a lot of the hurdles that this project has gone through in attempting to comply with our ordinances, in which they have, it just, as you all know, it just adds tremendous cost. And this is a project that this part of town and this community really needs. And so I'd support the 900 in whichever way staff determines is the most cost efficient and financially efficient way to do so.
Alderman Brown.
First of all, love Franktown and what it uniquely does in the community, so thank you for that. Two questions, or maybe a question and a clarification. The full cost, the $900,000 covers all the costs, not just stormwater, but all the roadway improvements and all. It's all in streets and it's everything all in. Okay. And then secondly, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, do we know the percentage or the portion of availability or what qualifies for the community development block grants? Do we have a sense of how much of that would cover or qualify in this? And I won't hold you to it. I'm just kind of curious what we think that would be. Okay.
I have it, but I want to avoid getting into the minutia of it.
Sure.
You could allocate what we have now, approximately $450,000, and then future year allocations and to cover the cost, which any type of improvement that we partner, whether it's a not-for-profit, Franktown or Housing Authority, or even a private development, we make sure the improvement is made, inspected, and approved, and then we receive invoices for the true costs before we provide any reimbursement. So we could use future allocation. However, we are working still with the Hill LLC.
Right.
And we talked about 600,000 for them. The other part that came up in our conversation that's real today is that should the federal government no longer continue with this program, Franktown and their group needs to obtain financing, and would require most likely the city guaranteeing that those funds would be allocated. Sure. We don't know what's going to happen with the CDBG program or other grants that we receive, but it did come up in our conversation. So the point being is we could look, if you're willing to support Franktown Open Arts, come back with an agreement, which we would, a development agreement that outlines where those funds would come from, and we could hone in on a final decision.
Yeah, I would just tag on that a little bit. Vernon hit it well. I think it's all eligible for CDBG. You've got a number of things competing for those same funds, like Vernon talked about. Not only the Hill, you're going to hear about another housing proposal in 2 weeks. We use it for a number of specific, as a unit comes available, deed restricted, that we keep in the affordable or workforce range. It's been a source for rehab of existing. So if you commit all of it, you limit your ability to do other good things. So you may want to look at how you balance that over time. And there is a level of uncertainty about how that will continue and at what level. Then that's always a little bit the case with CDBG. So it's just something to consider. There may well be other places to route dollars, and we could look at how that is potentially spread out over a couple fiscal years or so to just see how that could be manageable. That's all something we could work through if that's the desire of the board. But we want to be careful not to keep committing CDBG money to multiple projects, because these will tap those fairly limited funds pretty quickly.
Yep. Alderman Barnhill. Were you done, Alderman Brown? Yeah, thank you.
This property several years ago was Boys and Girls Club, was it not? Was it?
I don't believe
No,
anything's
I'm not saying there's anything on it. I'm saying
Proposed
this
for it.
was talked about as being the new location for the Boys and Girls Club.
No, there was something else. It wasn't
I'm not
Boys and
sure.
Girls.
One Boys and Girls Club?
Thrift store was talked about. The archives was
The
talked
archive.
about.
County
There, I believe there may have been a Boys and
that
Girls
goes
Club
back.
concept many years ago.
Many years ago.
Many.
Okay. So, I'm just trying to make
Yeah.
sure that I understand exactly where the property is, and it is next to.
Right near Academy Park, right?
Near the old BGA
Yep.
gymnasium and all in that particular area right in there. I would be much more inclined to support if I knew where the funds was coming from. Not necessarily support and then go look for the funds. How quickly can you put something together that shows us where the $900,000 is coming from? We've got a budget coming up.
Yeah.
I think the last time that we had a presentation on the Hill, I could be slightly wrong, but I think that group was asking for $5 million to do the Hill, plus the value of the Hill at that particular time was probably $2 million, so we were looking at $7 million for that particular piece of property also. So, yeah, and I don't necessarily, Johnson Circle, private road, tell me again now, Vernon, why they need that dedicated to the city? Are we running the drainage easement down Johnson?
Ability to maintain.
Yeah, so the purpose of doing that is that the housing authority on this section has an equity partner, and it's more efficient because of some of the timing. If we had Johnson Circle improved to city standards, and then the city work with Franktown to install that infrastructure in under the road. Now, you also asked the question, hopefully that answers that part, but I do want to elaborate.
That'll be enough.
We can definitely come back, as I mentioned, I know where the CDBG funds are going today, and I know what we're likely, if the program continues, receive in subsequent years. And Franktown is good. We had this discussion that if we use all or some, or whatever, that they know they may need to carry some of that installation, because that improvement in constructing, developing this site would be one of the first improvements to be made. So getting Johnson Circle dedicated to the city is what we would do. Lastly, regarding the hill, we just met with the LLC and a couple local architects that are volunteering their time to look at perhaps increasing the density and how that looks. We're going to bring that before you, and part of that ask, I know Derwin and Susan are sitting behind me, is does that additional density, what percentage would it reduce the request of that $5 million, and how does that look? Some of which is the CDBG fund. So we have two not-for-profits that certainly have done and proven they do worthy service to our community, for our community.
One last question. Where does your funding come now? What is your annual budget? Where does it come from?
Well, the annual budget is approximately $900,000. Most of that comes from individuals. We do get funding from some churches. We get sponsorships for the Festival of Lights drive-through display. We use that, of course, and some grants, some corporate donors. But the vast majority, 70+%, comes from individuals who believe in what we're doing.
You've got an annual
and-
budget now of 900,000.
Yes. Because of the capital campaign, we have raised more than that, obviously, the last few years. This last year was 2.4 million, but that was going towards this building. We just can't keep turning away kids.
Alderman Blanton, then I'll get Alderman.
I definitely want to see you guys have this building. I know it's kind of want to operate a nonprofit in Franklin, Tennessee, especially when you need a building to do it in. And these opportunities don't present themselves very often. I will say that I think we need to be a little bit more creative about how we possibly partner with you, because I don't think that we need to hopscotch over other nonprofits who have a similar mission and or importance to continue to be a part of our community. CBGB funds have, in my opinion, since I've been here, typically go to FHA or Hard Bargain, it seems, historically. I know there's some other smaller things. And in any nonprofit situation, it's hard when somebody starts leaning on the same partner, because that partner can change. And I say that as far as the city. But I do believe that this is a very important mission for our community, and I think that I want to get creative on how we can help them. So,
Alderman Berger.
without getting other people
What's the total budget for you? 6 million that you have to? What's it?
For the building, 7.25,
7.25. And you've raised about
4.58.
4.1.
Yeah, 4.5 million.
That's what you've raised. Okay, and then so this 900,000 you're trying to get funded, so you don't have to.
The 900,000 all of a
because
sudden
you're-
is going to be in addition to that,
because
and that would be
another million.
devastating.
Yeah, I'm really interested in seeing how we can do this,
Thank
because
you.
this has to be done. I'm totally supportive, Derwin, and of all the housing and everything we've been doing in this community. All works very hard in their community. What's real unique about this situation is I've known about Franktown for a long time, but just looking at this presentation made me realize all the things you all are doing. And I learned something here tonight, that there's some programs in here I had no idea you were doing. What you're doing is you're working with our youth, so when they grow up and get jobs, they don't need community housing. You've taken them out of that poverty and out of that cycle, or out of the lower income. The trades are paying marvelously. In this day and age, we are in dire straits and needs for kids in our trades going in, and we have a lot of people retiring. There's a program called Go Build Tennessee. If you're not familiar with it, I'm sure you are. That is a program that I think Governor Haslam started, and Governor Lee has resurrected it, to go out and to lift up the trades, so that our young people will go into the trades and earn fabulous livings today. And I just want us to, as a board, to work very hard. Vernon, bring us back some of those figures and where we can find this money, because we've got to help you do this, because it is a ripple effect of what you're doing, not demeaning any of these other nonprofits and people that are doing work in our housing and all the great nonprofits. This is like the center, the target, what you're doing here. And I think it is so important that this board and this city works with you and tries to help you get this done. Thank you.
Alderman Caesar.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know that anybody on the board disagrees with the mission of Franktown, and I think that's fantastic. Number one, for you folks, Brandon and Chris, coming in tonight and sharing some of the statistics. Many in our community would be shocked to hear that there's 1,800 families that would qualify at this level, and that you're working with less than 200 of them, and acknowledge that there is a gap there and an opportunity for us as a community to put our arms around these folks and help disrupt, if not break forever, the generational poverty that is going on in some of these communities. 900,000 is a lot, especially when I hear that 420-something thousand is available through CDBG. And we have another commitment to the Hill Project. Potentially, we haven't formally committed, but there's other, I guess, opportunities for us to use these funds. And I want to see this facility be built, because I believe that with the facility becoming real, you can expand beyond the 180 or 200 individuals you're helping and move in a much more positive way, so that these folks can grow up to become positive contributors to our community, providing needed services, tax revenue, and new family members that will continue to flourish in Franklin in the future. I do want us to be creative, but I don't want to commit the same money to multiple projects over and over again. Right now, I can just count off the top of my head, between the Hill and this project, we're at $6 million that we've talked about for CDBG, and there's 420-something thousand in that bucket, if I'm not mistaken, the numbers that you're sharing, Vernon. And so how do we work collectively to allow this project to move forward while not overcommitting? There's only so far 400,000 goes against 7 million. It can't go all the way, right? And we acknowledge that. So moving off of that economic discussion onto helping me understand Johnson Circle. Is Johnson Circle currently experiencing flooding or flood control issues?
So I know Paul's here, but the area has some issues of stormwater. But anytime a vacant parcel is developed, we have green infrastructure that handles the quality of the water that flows through that property and off that property once impervious surface put on, and then also the quantity, which the stormwater is, and this improvement will fix that area. And it's a much more permanent improvement, but as you heard, we all try to look at a viable solution, but the topography just doesn't accommodate it at a lesser cost. And as I want to assure you that we'll get with Michael and myself and Tom and some others, and if the direction is to be creative, we'll bring back those options for you to critique whether they're creative enough or not.
I appreciate that. And just for my simple understanding, currently we're not experiencing any flooding issues. I'm looking for Paul. I don't see. There he is. We're not experiencing any flooding issues. The development of this property is what we're trying to protect, what would happen potentially on Johnson Circle. Okay. Thank
Water
you.
flows over that property. It's flat, as Brandon said.
Sure.
There's a problem there, and when we have significant rainfall, but
I'm trying to see if we can improve a quality of life issue for our current residents with the development of this project. It doesn't sound like there's a current issue for the folks on Johnson Circle. We're just trying to protect them from a future issue. Great. Thank you.
Alderman Peterson.
Thank you. I don't want to be last all the time. Please remember that.
Raise your hand.
I've done it, but you. Well,
Stand up, make loud
there
noises.
you go. Well, but this is a very important issue. And whenever I drove out there and looked, I couldn't see that there was a problem with, stormwater runoff or anything like that. But I guess whenever you put the building right there, then that's going to make the other places below it a little bit more difficult to hold off the water, from them. But I thought we had some ways that we had worked with, and maybe some of these were talked about, like the Franklin Housing Authority. We had some, I don't want to say rules, but we had some commitments to some of these people or some of these projects that we would help them pay for some parts of it being done. And
Yeah,
so,
you've used CDBG for infrastructure on a number of housing-related projects over time. And then we also targeted some of the ARPA money to assist
Okay.
with some affordable housing projects that we were able to both target. I think it was water and sewer improvements and
Thank you.
affordable housing, which fit components that were in the ARPA guidelines. So you were able to do that with that one-time money, and then you've used CDBG fairly consistently with specific projects to help with various infrastructure. Sometimes it's stormwater, sometimes it's roadway, sometimes it's water and sewer.
and we have done that over many years.
Yes, you've done that on a sort of
Okay.
case-by-case basis as opportunities have arisen.
Well, and this particular project sounds like it deserves to be worked with in that same way, in my opinion. And I'm not sure how we can get started. As I say, I don't remember where we got the money from, where we used it for some of the other projects. I mean, unless what you're saying is that we had one-time money.
Well, you've had it as part of your CDBG program. It has fit into your 5-year plan. You do an annual allocation, and some of these projects have fit nicely within that allocation. You've done it sort of consistently over many years for specific projects. The ARPA money that we got through the whole COVID recovery component, that was a specific, more one-time component that we used to partner with the Housing Authority on a significant project there as well. So we have tried to be opportunistic where it applied, where the funds fit and help with infrastructure that helps support, in that case, affordable housing. In this case, it's a nonprofit that provides services that help low and moderate income families, which is all the purpose of community development block grant money.
And then it sounds like it's quite impressive.
It's eligible, it fits it, as has been identified by the board. You also have lots of other projects that fulfill that need as well. And it's how we allocate these dollars with potentially other dollars to get you there over a period of time.
Well, I certainly would like for us to find what we can do, because it seems to be very important. And what it is out there, and so we'd be taking over the road on Johnson Circle from the Franklin Housing Authority. Is that right?
It would become a public roadway with the installation of the
Because
public infrastructure
You want to do the
within the roadway. Within the
y-
roadbed, it makes sense to make it a public facility at that point.
but it's also underground, because when they were first showing, they showed the green spot behind it that was not underground, on the other side, away from the road. And so, but this we're talking about having to put underground.
Again, yes, this infrastructure would be under Johnson Circle, and Johnson Circle then would be milled and overlaid and be brought up to city standards as we normally require of any neighborhood that has private roads. So and then it'll be dedicated to the city thereafter.
Well, I certainly want us to see how we can manage this.
Alderman Baggett, quick comment.
Can you, in that financial analysis, impact fees, I think that I'm sure there's road, sewer, and water impact fees associated with this, or is there not?
Well, there's development impact fees for the project.
Right, and I think in this analysis that we're doing, or that you're going to do, find out where the money is. I'd be curious to know that number too,
We'll-
what the
we'll
total
include that.
impact fees are. And then this last thing is, I think it sounds like there's general consensus on getting the numbers. I think time is of the essence for these folks. So I don't know if we could see the numbers in the next board meeting and then be able to do something the following month. I think I don't want our procedural kind of calendar to hold them back a couple, even 2 or 3 months. I mean, I think, but they have an October deadline, and it's super important. So I know you understand that.
We'll,
I think we can at least get you some concepts to respond to.
we'll get
maybe.
you some options,
Yeah.
concepts, yes, and show. I like the word creativity. That's my middle name. So we'll figure that out. I know.
Mr. Mayor.
That's why I said it. Thank
I
you.
have one question if I could. If you can share this, there's another public partner that's obviously involved in this in terms of Williamson County. You talked about a lease. Is that a no-cost lease? Is it a sale? What is the value of what the county is providing in terms of the land to you in the broader context of the $7.5 million project?
The county commissioners took a vote and voted unanimously to let Franktown lease this property. They cannot legally sell it. If it goes to sale, it has to go to the highest bidder. But they can certainly lease us the property. So the specifics are too much to go into, but basically we have a 30-year lease for $1 a year.
Okay.
And I show up every year with a Eisenhower silver dollar and make my payment. In fact, we had one board member that was willing to step up and pay the entire lease for the entire life of the generosity that's inspired
I was
me,
gonna say,
that
yeah.
he was willing to do that.
I'd be willing to help you with that.
So
Okay.
yes, but it's $1 a year.
So it's basically free land,
Free land.
essentially. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
I'd like to ask a few questions if I could, and, you know, I'm concerned about the precedent that this may create with other nonprofits. I'm concerned with the amount of money versus what we've done on other projects like with the Housing Authority and Hard Bargain. But I think my question to Chris is, you've raised $2.5 million, and I've got mixed numbers on my notes here about how much the total project is. The last number I heard was 7.25. So how much money do you have to start construction if we agreed to help you?
Right.
Yeah, so part of the reason is we're, it's a bit of a moving target. We got a pretty detailed estimate, a schematic estimate, I should say, several months ago. We've applied escalation to that over the last couple of years as time has passed. Chris's number, to be clear, was a program cost, so that included, finishing all that of the building. So the construction cost, from what we can tell, is going to be between $6 and $6.7 million. And then we anticipate another several $100,000 of, finishes, computers,
So how much
tables.
have you got to have to start the building?
I'm not sure, because also that, we would have to,
Well,
yeah.
it seemed like to me that's a pretty important question. You're asking us for $900,000 and you're not aware of how much it's going to take to get the project started. So I would think that would be an important thing for you to bring us. I'm a huge fan of what you're doing, don't get me wrong, but I'm also very aware of all the other needs of this community as far as roads and housing, and I have great concern that we would obligate all of our CDBG money in the future for this project, because right now it's helping people stay in their homes, it's helping people get into homes. And so I think that's a very high on our priority, is what we're going to do as far as housing in our community.
right.
So, and the other question I had was, you mentioned that you're at capacity, and I think it was 160 or so kids that you're serving. What is your waiting list?
It varies between the time of year,
What is
the
the
summer,
waiting
school
list?
year, et cetera, but
Give me a middle ground. Just
we'll have 30, 40, 50 kids on the waiting list at any given moment. Let me explain as far as where we got that number from, as far as the population. 37% of the Franklin Special School District children, kindergarten through 8th grade, are on the free reduced lunch program. You put numbers to that and add to it the kids that are now in Centennial, add all that together, you're looking at about a pool of 1,800 children that are on government assistance. And we're dealing with a tenth.
I
of
think
those
you
kids.
answered, you have 30 on your waiting list, so
Well,
I think that's the
And
number I
other
was
times of the
looking for.
year, it will be significantly higher, yes.
Yeah. Okay, but like I say, I'm a fan. You're doing great work and changing lives. But we've got a lot of lives we have to look at. in the
Right.
community
If we can
and a
get
lot
this
of
water
needs.
retention issue solved, I think we can start the first stages of digging dirt, laying pipe and some of the infrastructure below ground stuff. We can start on that. We've got the money in the bank to do that part of the project. So we can start and meet that October threshold if we can get over this water retention hurdle.
My other question to you then would be, if you're able to start the infrastructure, when will you be able to start the building? So I think those are things where we're tying up our funds. So I think those are pertinent questions to ask. So we're ready to move on to item 2.
Just one question, I'll take a second or two. You don't do the MAC program. How do you interface with the Franklin Special School District MAC program then? Do you do is there any morning and afternoon care for the Franklin Special School District, the MAC program? Do you
No, we work with we pick up the children after school and we bring them to whatever facility we're using. We work with them, programming, feed them, do evening programming, take them home around 7:30 to 8 o'clock at night, occasional Saturdays, but we do not provide before school care, no.
Okay.
All right, item 2, which is ordinance 2024-43 to rezone 70.57 acres from agriculture district to Plan PD 17.71 per 172,000 district for the property located east of Paytonsville Road and north of Paytonsville Road, Erickson Senior Living PUD, established a public hearing April the 8th, 2025.
Oh, that's not what we want. Can you click on that? Right there. Yeah. I need the map. No, down. That.
What was your nickname, your new nickname, Vernon?
Mr. Creativity?
Mr. Creativity?
That is Mr.
Yeah,
Tech Support, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Good evening. I'm going to talk to you about the Erickson Senior Development Living PUD rezoning and development plan, if you don't mind me doing both of those items together.
That'd be great.
Great.
Thank you.
The PUD is proposing, and the rezoning is proposing 1,250 age-restricted multifamily units and 172,000 square feet of continuum of care facility under the Regional Commerce Design concept. Now that the amendment for the major thoroughfare plan has been approved at Planning Commission, staff can recommend approval with conditions of the development plan and recommend approval of the rezoning. The plan had 5 MOSs, 1 for loading areas to be on the side of the building, 2 for the block length to be a maximum of 6,200 linear feet, 3 for the FFE to be at ground level for the buildings, 4 for the removal of the eastern connection requirement, and 5 for the reduction of parking for the age-restricted multifamily from 1.5 spaces to 1.2 spaces. The only MOS that staff was not supporting was the block length, mainly because that's nearly double the maximum requirement today. However, the Planning Commission recommended all of the MOSs for approval by a vote of 8-0, except for that MOS number 2 for the block length, but they still recommended approval just at 6-2. They also recommended approval of the entire development plan and the rezoning by a vote of 8-0. For the development plan, it was a recommendation of approval with conditions as amended. Please take note of that. With the added statement on condition of approval number 2 at the very end, it now reads, the applicant shall make the following roadway improvements during the first phase of development unless otherwise modified by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Staff is supportive of that, but there was some key language there we can explain if needed. And so I'm happy to answer any questions.
We do have two speakers.
Great.
And I've given Mr. Gamble a little bit extra time. And Mr. Montgomery, I'm not sure how deep you want to go. I'm going to let you have. I've heard very brief before. We'll see if you truly qualify for the definition.
Good evening. My name is Steve Montgomery. I am representing Erickson Senior Living, and we are very excited for the opportunity to get the application presented tonight. Look forward to answering any questions for you. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Gamble.
Hi, Greg Gamble, representing Erickson Senior Living tonight. In front of you, I have an 8.5 by 11 packet that is a few images in there. Mayor Moore said I could run through this very quickly. If you'll flip to the first page there, Erickson Senior Living is the owner and operator of all of their campuses. Erickson's model is a CCRC, Continuum Care Retirement Community. The CCRC model includes independent living, assisted living, skilled nursing, and memory care on the same campus. Residents pay a refundable fee for their 1 or 2 bedroom home and a monthly fee for meals and hospitality services. The average age of the resident of Erickson community is 80 years old. If you'll flip to the next page, the typical Erickson community has 500 employees in healthcare, dining services, operations, hospitality, and security. The campus master plan includes a wide range of amenities for residents, including programmed social events, indoor pool and spa, indoor and outdoor pickleball, and transportation, to name a few. On the next page, the property that Erickson is planning is approximately 68 acres located on the east side of Paytonsville Road. With the recent adoption of Envision Franklin, the special consideration was added for this policy area the following are encouraged to reduce demand and transportation network uses with non-peak trip generation patterns, small-scale offices, local commercial uses, institutional uses, and residential uses. So this proposal fitting that box. On the next page then is the master plan. The Erickson master plan includes 1,250 independent living units with 175 beds for assisted living, skilled nursing, and memory care. The buildings are located between 150 and 200 feet from Paytonsville Road to protect the view shed. A new private street with public access will be provided north-south parallel to Paytonsville Road to provide future connectivity. The campus is a gated community with 24-hour on-site security. The security personnel are trained emergency service responders to assist with medical emergencies. This training affords Erickson's team with the ability to handle many emergencies like falls on site without calling 911. This is a big differentiator to the other senior living facilities in our area. Security personnel will be located at the main entrance, and the secondary entry gate will be located with access to the assisted living facility. All of the surface parking lots on the campus are located in the rear of the buildings, out of view from the internal street network. On the next page then, this map shows the location of parking garages under the buildings. 39% of the parking is under the buildings, 23% under carport, 13% are on-street parallel parking for guests, and 25% are surface parking spaces. On the next page then, the campus is designed with a collection of 3 to 6 story buildings, all interconnected, with indoor air-conditioned bridges. These bridges provide an internal pathway for residents to get around within the campus in any weather. On the next page, of course, residents are encouraged to get outside and enjoy parks throughout the campus. The scale of this campus allows Erickson to provide unmatched services and amenities for seniors. On the next page, Erickson provides a long list of amenities for its residents, including 5 restaurants. None of them are cafeteria style, all with a real restaurant experience. An indoor theater, indoor pool, indoor fitness, indoor and outdoor pickleball, as mentioned before, and community gardens. Then on the next page, Also provides a Grand Central Park with a small amphitheater, shade structure, and gardens. The next page speaks to the traffic patterns. The residents of Erickson Senior Living are typically driving between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. They do not like to be on the road during peak traffic times. The shift changes for staff are also in non-peak periods, typically at 6 a.m. and 3 p.m. in the afternoon. We believe that this aligns with the Envision Franklin special consideration. You can see here that the campus contributes very low volumes in comparison to Reams Fleming and existing traffic patterns. The top bar graph shows in brown Erickson's contribution to the overall traffic infrastructure. On the next page then, Paytonsville Road will be improved to collector road standards. This is not a requirement of the traffic study, but is a request by the city engineer for a private developer to construct a capital improvement project that has been funded by BOMA. Erickson will be providing right-of-way for the road, and will be constructing the median along with 2 northbound lanes. Only 1 southbound lane will exist until future development. At the Planning Commission meeting, a representative of Boyle asked that engineering staff and BOMA consider if a larger scope as it relates to Paytonsville Road, looking at something that might be a little bit more holistic in that area so that more could be done at one time. And that conversation resulted in a change to the condition of approval by Planning Commission. So we have to do this or a plan modified by BOMA. So that was that change in the condition of approval. On the next page then, this is a safety consideration that will be done at the curve on Paytonsville Road to improve the experience at night. On the next page, this shows the location of a new 2 million gallon water tank that will be Mill Crofton's water tank that will provide service for the entire 850 acres recently annexed by the city of Franklin in this area. The water main will be extended by Erickson Senior Living down Paytonsville Road. This also shows the sewer extension that will be provided from Erickson's front door to I-65. There are 5 modification of standards, as Amy mentioned. These first 3, supported by staff, include requests to allow loading areas to be on the side of the building. If you remember, our parking is located behind the building, so we're trying to eliminate those conflicts between loading and unloading in the building and residents who are parking that are 80 years old in the back. So we're asking for that to be moved to the front, to the side. Request to allow the finished floor elevation to be at ground level. This is for ADA access into every door. Modification of standards number 5 to reduce the parking requirement from multifamily residential to 1.2 spaces per unit. This is more in line and more consistent with what you just recently adopted in your zoning ordinance revision. On the next page then, modification of standards number 4 to remove the connectivity for the eastern connection. We've been working with our neighbors, and though Erickson is not purchasing these the darker orange properties, the neighbors have committed to including this in the major thoroughfare plan. So on this page, you'll see these orange roads that are going from Paytonsville Road all the way to future Carruthers Parkway. They've agreed that those local roads will be in the thoroughfare plan for future development. And that's needed really just to create a secure campus so we can have a fully gated, secured, enclosed campus. On the next page, and last, Mayor, I'm wrapping up. Modification of standards number 2, this is a request to reduce or to increase the block length. The block length shown here is in purple and is measured around the entire area that makes up the block. Maximum block length is established in the ordinance to maintain convenient pedestrian and automotive circulation. With Erickson's residents, this convenience is provided in a different way. The red lines that are shown on this map show the internal connectivity from building to building through air-conditioned corridors. The green shows the interconnectivity of our exterior sidewalk system linking the parks and open space areas throughout the campus. The connectivity is not compromised as a result of block length. We're trying to encourage the residents to walk, to get outside, to not be dependent on their vehicle. As a result of that, the interconnectivity is within the buildings. Happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Okay, questions, comments? Well, you must have done a very thorough job. Thank you. Item 4, City of Franklin Contract 2025-48 with Erickson Living for a road impact fee offset agreement not to exceed $5,871,648.61. Any questions about that for Mr. Holmes?
Let me pull up the exhibit real quick. Okay, so as Greg Gamble just stated that they have committed, even though the traffic impact study didn't require them to build out their frontage, which is what we typically require of applicants. This is really just so that we can get infrastructure out there before development and not have them put a bunch of utilities in our way. This is the same approach that we're taking with the Reams Fleming track to the west of this property. So as it sits right now in the CIP, there was about $9.9 million. Erickson Living will bring about $1.1 million to the table in road impact fees. And what we're proposing to do is cover the rest of that cost at about $4.7 million so that these improvements can be done. And this money was actually put in the budget back in 2019, really to try to form some type of partnership so that this roadway could get done as this area developed. Greg had mentioned that we're looking at potentially expanding that scope. We haven't had those conversations internally, so to keep Erickson Living moving forward, we wanted to move this road impact fee agreement as it stands today and explore that internally with our budget team and city administration and potentially bring that back as an expanded scope, but we need to have those conversations first. So approving this allows them to move forward, and happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Paul, this relates to one of the items the board has already identified in the CIP, is that correct?
That is correct.
So this is one that we folded in, and that would really, because we fully loaded that cost to the city, that actually would benefit us in terms of some capacity within the CIP, because this would happen within the context of this development,
That
correct?
is correct, yes,
Okay.
sir.
Alderman Baggett.
To the tune, because there's the offsets and the debits and credits have me.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you give me like if it was 9 million in the CIP, is that right? Isn't
That's
that
correct.
And we're saying we're going to reimburse up to 5.8.
Yes, and they're
And
paying 1.1 million.
They're paying 1.4 million as their impact fees or something you said, right?
Yes.
So does that mean the project costs 7.1 million-ish?
No, so our additional contribution to the road impact fees is about 4.7 million.
Okay, so their 1.4 is including that 5.8.
Correct.
Okay, so they're basically saying they can do the job for 5.8,
Yes.
and we have 9 in there. That's good. All right,
good.
so it's that. I'm just trying to
Does
get
that
that
include the
delta.
right-of-way component
That
or not?
includes the
Okay,
right-of-way.
so that's an
So that was
element
a lot of the savings too, is in the right of way too. And
Yeah, and the 9.9 million was an expanded scope, and that's what they're referring to, or Greg Gamble referred to, is that there may be a request or look at how we expand this to get more infrastructure through a public-private partnership, but we haven't had a chance to have those conversations internally. So we want to move forward with this, and if it makes sense for all involved, we'll consider coming back with an amendment. But we haven't had a chance to have those conversations.
no, that's great. That's a good deal.
Okay, item 5, ordinance 2024-50, ordinance to rezone 1.95 acres from residential R4 district and mixed residential district to civic institutional district for the property located north of Liberty Pike and east of Chestnut Lane at 104 Chestnut Lane. Established a public hearing on April the 8th. Amy, we're enjoying having you tonight.
Well, thank you. I'm enjoying being here. This is pretty straightforward. Envision Franklin supports this when it's an existing civic institutional use. This is just a church that has been here for decades and wanting to get CI zoning. So staff recommended approval. Planning Commission recommended approval of a vote of 8-0.
Everybody good? Item 6, ordinance 2024-51 to rezone 20.15 acres from Plan PD District 0.2 per 263,100 district to Plan PD 243,200 per 120 district with property located north of Liberty Pike, east of Franklin Road. This is the factory at Franklin PUD. Established a public hearing April the 8th.
Yes, thank you. The main components of this rezoning and development plan revision
You're
are...
going to do 6 and 7 together.
Yes, please.
Okay, great.
Rezoning and development plan. And like I said, the main components of these requests are to modify the entitlements to remove the density that was there. It was very low to begin with, but they're removing that. To lower the overall non-residential square footage, to add the hotel at 120 keys, and also to construct a parking garage. The plan has gotten a preliminary certificate of appropriateness from Historic Zoning Commission for the location and scale of the hotel and the parking garage. They have submitted a shared parking analysis and are requesting a 37% overall reduction in total required parking spaces. Staff has reviewed that and can support the parking study based on national standards. There's also one MOS for sureties to allow a surety bond instead of a letter of credit. Staff is supporting this MOS, and we are reviewing to include this option in the zoning ordinance update. We will be presenting that at either the March or April Joint Conceptual Workshop as part of our zoning ordinance update. Planning Commission recommended approval of the MOS by a vote of 8-0 and recommended approval of the rezoning and development plan with conditions by a vote of 8-0 for both of those.
I do have a speaker. If it's okay to go ahead and call them up, that'd be Greg Gamble, stranger in town.
Feels like
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Alderman. There have been some changes to the plan between the Joint Conceptual Workshop and the Planning Commission. I thought you might appreciate seeing a little bit more detail tonight. So I have an 8.5 by 11 in front of you. If you'll turn to the first page then, as Amy stated, Holiday is proposing a new 120-room hotel and a new 150-stall parking garage. Those are shown in blue under the proposed on the bottom. In comparing the existing parking lot with the proposed parking lot, you can see that they'll be reworking the design to be in compliance with the new standards of the zoning ordinance for landscape and drive aisles. The stormwater basin that's a problem along the railroad tracks will be reconstructed as underground detention underneath the parking lot. The new entrance drive will be constructed at Daniels, creating a four-way intersection for better traffic flow and pedestrian crosswalks. This will be a signalized intersection. A right-in, right-out is proposed near the railroad track to provide convenient access and better fire circulation. On the next page then, this shows the 8 connections that the factory campus will have in the future as improvements are made. There will be the 2 existing ones that are along Franklin Road. We have 3 proposed along Liberty Pike, and then 3 off-site connections to the north that will eventually connect someday to Harpeth Industrial Court. On the next page then, the factory is located behind the main facade of the factory per the historic design guidelines, and you can see that alignment here in this master plan. On the next page, the front facade will be 2 stories in height, and it steps up to 3 stories in line with the gable of the existing factory structure. This is to create that kind of low profile view along Liberty. The raised concrete pad that's alongside Liberty Hall will be removed and replaced with a new courtyard between the hotel and Liberty Hall. This will be a great courtyard for small gatherings and opportunities for an outdoor experience at the factory. Building 9, which is located here, that's Building 9 right there. The main facade of Building 9 will remain as a part of the historic design guidelines, but the hotel swimming pool will be located inside that building. The front facade of Building 9 would be a pedestrian sidewalk, the sidewalk that connects Studio 10 Theater and Mojo Tacos. This sidewalk will remain and will continue through the hotel in an open paseo. Then on the next page there, this is a view of the hotel from Liberty Pike, and you can see the relationship of the front facade to the factory. as well as the hotel drop-off and the Paseo, which is that opening through the hotel that continues that walk to Mojo Tacos. This was a very important view, scale, elevation for Historic Zoning Commission from this angle. On the next page then, Holiday is working with the City of Franklin, Williamson County Emergency Services to better address the factory buildings. Currently on Google or Waze, if you look up Liberty Hall, it gives you a Franklin Road address. And if you're not familiar with the factory, you park on the Franklin Road side, then you have to walk all the way through the factory to get to Liberty Hall. It creates kind of an overload in this front area here as a result. So working with emergency services, we've begun identifying suite numbers that can be used by Google or Waze that will start to identify the location of the future hotel with a separate address. It'll identify Liberty Hall with a suite number, and it'll identify the parking lot, the parking garage with its own address as well, giving people better understanding of where they need to go in the factory to park. So been great coordination with the City of Franklin. The next page then, this is a view of the parking garage as seen from the back parking lot. It's tucked in right in next to the Ken Means Carousel. I'm going to skip the next 2 pages if you wouldn't mind and go to this color-coded map that you're seeing right here. So in this color-coded map, the improvements will be phased. Phase 1A will be constructed with approximately 119 new parking spaces with the removal of the train cars and the construction of new parking spaces along Liberty Pike. So right off the bat, phase 1, let's start accounting for where we're going to be losing parking before we start construction of the buildings. Phase 1B includes the construction of the new parking garage. So that's the first structure that we're going to build, parking garage. Number 2, phase 2 includes the start of the hotel. While the hotel is being constructed, we're going to be working on phase 3A, which includes the construction of the parking area around the garage and construction of the new Daniels Drive road alignment. Phases 3B, 3C, 3D represent how the parking lot will be phased to maintain parking spaces, very similar to what we did in the front when this parking lot was reconstructed to meet current standards. All 3 phases would maintain more parking spaces than are currently at the factory today, and the construction of the parking areas will be completed prior to the opening of the new hotel. Happy to talk more about the modification of the standards, Mayor, but I hope that's pretty clear in regards to the surety bond. So happy to answer any questions.
Alderman Brown.
We're going to talk parking, of course, as you
Sure.
can imagine. First of all, I really appreciate this phase plan. I think you guys have listened to the neighbors very, very well. I feel really good about that. I just think you're going to solve a lot of problems by phasing that out the way that you are. I also want to acknowledge, I've talked to the Miles Manor neighborhood, significant improvement in the parking issues since they proactively started putting temporary signs out front, resident parking only, massive improvement. And so, in fact, I heard the other day, not a single car parked in the residential area since those signs have gone up. So I think we keep watching that. I think we keep thinking about how, we keep that fresh, but well done, and that's working. And so let's make it keep working. And if we need to keep improving that or make it more permanent, great, but that is working. We also talked about the idea of off-site parking, using the school down the road and shuttle service. Where were you at with that? Is there options on that?
Benton with Holidays here tonight. Love to answer that question for you. Thanks.
Great.
Yeah, the shuttle service is currently on Saturdays, all day Saturday. It's a government subsidized program, so there has to be some payment, and so it's $1 a rider. That's not a big deal for us to cover that on big days, though. There's constraints with the school, obviously, during the week. Saturdays is the one clear day. Sunday could be used as well. I suspect we could probably work something out in the summer times too, but that's certainly an option, and it's working. Obviously, we're going to be building more parking with this next phase too. So.
Yeah. Well, I think Saturday is one of our biggest issues anyway,
Yeah.
especially when you got big events going. And I think the fact that you're going to offer to subsidize that, that's
Right.
new and that's awesome. So
Yeah.
I think that's something you should do, and I think that's great. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. My final comment is that we'll continue. I know you didn't hit the arts piece, but my arts district partner over there, Miss Emily Wright, and I are going to keep pushing on that stuff. And again, it's not just about the big installations. I think as we look at that Daniels intersection and stuff, we want to keep pushing on what those things are. And so
For
we'll
sure.
we'll continue to have those conversations.
We're
too.
working on that.
I know you are.
Yeah.
So thank you.
I'm good, Mayor. Alderman Berger, and I was looking at Alderman Peterson just in case. Alderman
She
Berger.
have her hand up? Oh,
No,
okay.
she didn't.
Talk to me about that traffic light. I know when there's events happening there, that traffic light's gonna come in handy if it's signalized correctly to get people through, and then it changes, but I don't know during the day, during a typical day and everything, this traffic light, is it 24/7 that this is gonna be in operation? Because I just don't know if we need 24/7 on that traffic light.
So Megan Sigler with KCI Technologies,
Yeah.
we did the TIS as well as the
Okay.
shared parking study. That traffic signal would work 24/7. We do meet, or we're anticipated to meet the peak hour, so weekday warrants and not just weekend warrants. So we're anticipating that it'll be warranted.
Yeah.
And I will note that we also have it as part of the recommendation that it's coordinated with Franklin and Liberty, so
Yeah.
that it operates together as a coordinated network.
Yeah, I worry about it being coordinated enough and where we can actually move traffic on Liberty Pike during the weekday. I'm not worried about the events, those things will take care of themselves, but during the weekday, I just don't want that light to be red on Liberty and one car comes out and the people are sitting there because one car came out. I can see that happening. And it's going to be a busy place. It already is a busy place. I mean, we all know it's extremely busy, but sometimes you drive up and down Liberty Pike and
I think one of the things that we could approach city engineering and Adam Mosier about is finding those times during the day where it can just be a flashing yellow light.
there may be. I'm not
Mhm.
sure there is, but I'd like you to look into it.
Yeah, we can do that.
And then,
We'll look
of
into
course, at a certain time, maybe after 11 o'clock, it's a flashing light.
it. Right.
Like
That's
that
like
will
on
happen as well.
on Royal Oaks. It
Yeah.
just flashes yellow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that usually is
once you get to a certain
the
period.
case, but I just make sure that is also.
That's great. We'll do
Yeah,
that.
just look into that. I may be wrong on that totally, but okay.
No, it's worth checking out. We'll do that.
Well, and I will say, usually when we do signal timing, we do take into account what traffic is on the side streets. And I know you guys got some adaptive signals, but you can program those signals
Yeah.
to only have specific times, or for those phases to only be called if there is a car actually sitting waiting to
True.
exit. Is
That
another
might be
thing that you
helpful
can do.
too. And with Middle 8 getting built too, that's a whole different dynamic as well.
Yep.
So I get that. Thanks.
Alderman Peterson.
Just to say, I live where 96 and Eddie Lane coming together, and let me tell you, that light does not turn red on 96 unless there are some people waiting there and have been waiting there for a while. So I mean, and so that means that if there's nobody coming, the main signal is going to stay green.
Alderman Caesar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Greg, I just had one quick question, and I'm referring to I don't know what page this is, Factory at Franklin traffic improvements.
Yeah.
These properties along the northern boundary
Yes.
currently I think there's a sign there for staff-only parking. In these improvements, are you looking to close access to that first one? Because that's the one that I'm always tempted to drive into a
Right.
park. And I'm more
No,
curious for connectivity there.
these are 3 previously identified locations where, when and if Harpeth Industrial Court properties were developed, those roads would be extended through. We're not proposing extending roads at this time. It's when future development would occur.
With this improvement, will you close the connections?
No.
Okay,
No
thank
plan.
Anybody else, Alderman?
Yes.
Saget?
Thank you.
Got a lot of B's on this board, don't you?
I've got to disclose that Holiday Properties is a customer, but I have no financial interest in this parcel whatsoever, so I do have to disclose that. The parking is, I mean, a real problem. It truly is, and our neighbors, you know, Matt, you brought up the temporary signs that the neighbors of Ward 4 want, but so we've got to figure that out, how we can make that permanent and legal, because they have been working, I guess. But we've got to figure out how to make that permanent and legal. And I know that that's really hard because we've looked at it downtown, resident-only parking, and there's just complications. But it is working, and those neighbors really, you know, we'll see what happens when the farmers market is no longer there on Saturdays. I think that will help tremendously with some of the overflow parking into the, and as long as there's not another tenant, I think, on the horizon with that kind of mass crowd coming in all in a few hours, I think that will help. But nonetheless, I still want to advocate for that old Liberty and Daniels Drive, making sure that if we can come up with a way to make these permanent, I would like to do that for them as well. You know, I've heard from tenants, in fact, you know, there's just general concerns about this. I'm sure you've heard from the tenants as well. This is not a planning, this is more towards the applicant, which is just making sure that whatever scenario you have where employees are parking, the hotel, the concern was that the hotel employees are going to add 120 rooms, and those employees are going to have to park somewhere, plus the guests, and then you're all of a sudden we're kind of back net neutral to where we are now, which is fine, but I think logistically there could probably be some better ways to internally, not through government regulation, you know, to get that worked out, and that just takes time. But the third thing is the traffic study, or the transportation study that we're doing, the transit study we're doing. I really think, you know, what you're doing at Liberty Elementary and across at Harlansdale, and then what we're doing downtown with parking down there, I think there's a huge opportunity, and I'm extending the invitation to Holiday Properties to be involved in that traffic study heavily. Met with Downtown Franklin Association. They are interested in a partnership with Holiday, and I know y'all have already partnered on the Jingle All the Way thing, or the Christmas sale, you know, the Holly Trolley. I knew it was something cute, but I think expanding that. I mean, that's how, and I think you said it the last time about Cool Springs, but transit is really effective. Transit down here is really how we solve this area's issue too. It's getting those people from here to downtown and to our other things, and then Cool Springs. I think we're really going to finally have like 3 hubs with enough density in those areas that we can have effective transit. So I encourage to continue to explore those transit options, because that is going to be imperative. But appreciate it. I think it's great. I would love to have like 200 more parking spots, but I know it's limited in how high you could go from historic. And we also want to protect the historic character of the building. So it's kind of one of those things, but I generally like it. A lot of the things we can't put into ordinance, what I want to see done, or can't put into like a development plan necessarily. Some of these things, or maybe we can. But those things that I just mentioned, I'd really like to see happen. Thank you.
Alderman Berger, and remind everybody we have 3 items left.
I just want to ask about, so there's 252 spaces in the new garage, correct?
250.
Okay. Phases 3B, 3C, 3D, total on those 3 are what? 1,000? No. What do you get out of surface on 3 B, C, and
Do
D?
you know the number off the top of your head?
Well,
Yeah.
don't give me the number. Just let me ask something else. If you took phase 3D and put up another parking garage, could you get, I know it's a lot of money, could you get more parking that way from 3D if you put a parking garage out there?
We could for sure get more parking if we could build a parking garage. I think it's getting through, well, historic zoning is pretty big, right?
Well, we need 2 or 3 stories back there on 3D.
Yeah.
You need a 2 to 3 story parking garage on 3D to solve your problems,
Well,
I think.
to be clear, we don't have a problem with this plan.
No, when it's totally built out.
Correct. That's correct. So the way that this is phased in the sheet that I'm looking at with it has a tabulation in the bottom corner. It shows the phases, each phase and how much is being built. And then
Sure,
you have
I get
your,
it.
what's taken out of offline is a negative. So when we're working on the hotel, there are some parking spaces that are existing today that will be taken offline for fencing and construction. But we're building the garage
Right,
will precede
yeah.
that. So on whole, we've got a net surplus along the way.
With every phase.
So what you're saying, once you get parking garage done and you get all the phases that you're showing me on here done, you're going to have sufficient parking for all the stuff that's going to go on at the factory
Correct.
when it's all phased in.
Correct. And the intent is, and then during construction, we're going to be
Yeah, that's
but-
your headache.
Well, but
Yeah.
we're going to be maintaining a surplus of parking during construction too.
Uh-huh.
That's what we were trying to convey with that table. I can walk you through
Yeah, I saw
it
that.
on the
Yeah.
sidebar, but
And this area here is where you're seeing most of the parking issues over here on Franklin Road.
Yeah.
So 250 car parking garage where people want to park is critical. Over along the railroad track, now keep in mind, this distance from the railroad track to Franklin Road, it's the same distance from Landmark Bookstore to Starbucks.
Yeah.
That's how far that is. It's a long walk to think that you're going to park on the railroad track and go to the restaurant.
No.
This is an
You're
excellent opportunity where the valet parking could be for the hotel, right? Let's let
Yeah.
the valet guys for the hotel run back and forth.
Yeah, but we're not talking about that. I mean, phase 3C and 3D are going to be people parking there that's going to access Liberty Hall and all those places.
Very well
That's
could.
why
That's
you
the hope.
want.
Yeah,
very well
that's
could.
why-
that's the hope.
we
Yeah,
want.
And I like what you did for, putting, so when people Google that, the address is coming. Thank you.
correct.
Smart.
Right.
Thanks.
Hey, can I make a quick clarification? Just to be clear, that they haven't sufficient parking per their shared parking study. I mean, the zoning ordinance is requiring, I think 300 more spaces on the site. But looking at peak demands of the different uses on site, they're saying through the study that that minimum number can be reduced. I just want to clarify that. We did agree with it, yeah, but I just want to make sure that you guys are talking a lot about parking spaces and
Well, Berry Farms has a shared parking plan. McEwen Town Center has a shared parking plan. A lot of our communities that have a mixture of uses have shared parking. The factory has a shared parking plan with all of the various uses that are in there. They look at the peak times,
Are you talking about the
the entire campus.
Factory.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Alderman Plant.
Just, everybody's disclosing, I'm gonna be really quiet, and I'm gonna leave the room when this is voted on, because currently I'm employed by the factory, soon to be operating a nonprofit called the Circle of Giving, so I will be recusing myself from any votes having to do with this. I've been.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, resolution 2025-06, adopting the amended Williamson County Multi-Hazard Mitigation Plan. Any questions about it? Thank you.
You want me to
Item
describe it?
9, Amendment 1 to City of Franklin Contract 2021-0072 with Ford Classic Homes for development agreements with a payment of $275,000 for costs associated with extending the sanitary sewer collection system improvements related to meadows and villages at Southbrook Plan Development. Mr. Gerd.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This agreement had originally been established as a three-party agreement between the Chadwell Partnership out in Berry Farms, Ford Homes, who's building a couple neighborhoods on Lewisburg Pike, and the city. The Chadwell Partnership had come in and updated their development plan, which became vested. And part of that was extending infrastructure that would allow to be extended towards Lewisburg Pike and allows those developments to to be completed, and future development in the area on the west side of Lewisburg. We agreed that there would be a three-party agreement with $275,000 being proportionate to the city, Ford Homes, and the Chadwell Partnership. The Chadwell Partnership has subsequently not decided to go forward. They did grant the easements. Ford Homes is going to pay the remaining costs. They're asking the city to just pay what we originally had committed to in that agreement of $275,000 several years ago, and not anymore, to complete that infrastructure. And I would also add too that since that time, and Ford Homes agrees with it, they'll pay the new sewer and water impact fees too that are associated with their development henceforth, and that we recently updated. Thank you.
Item number 10, discussion and presentation of the 10-year capital investment plan projects related to growth impact.
So we've talked a lot about infrastructure aligning with growth and growth patterns and timing. And one of the things as we were doing that as a staff team that Paul and his team pulled together is just a different look at the CIP projects that are before you in the context of those that are driven by growth. So we wanted to just share that with you to just add maybe a little more to the context of the CIP decisions that we'll be making in the coming weeks. And by way of an update, we've almost got all those compiled. Our goal would be to have for you at least a first cut of what we got back in the second round of priorities at our next meeting, to at least give you that to chew on. But we wanted to give you this for some added context around the projects we have and what is coming through. So take it away, Paul.
So if you remember back in the day when the planning department did a suitability analysis of the city, that's these exhibits. Andrew Orr, I give him credit for doing it with his team. The reddish, orangish color is least suitable. Green is most suitable. And really what they came out with is this exhibit, which outlines the sanitary sewer basins, which really drives a lot of the development. Again, the Goose Creek being a short-term growth area, the West Basin being a short-term, and then a few others that are mid-term, which is Spencer Creek and Mays Creek. And then obviously those southwest basins are long-term due to lack of infrastructure in those areas, as highlighted by our planning department. Again, this is just the same exact map overlaid with the suitability analysis. And so what we did a little bit differently as a staff team is we looked at what projects in the CIP and where do they fall in those short-term, long-term, mid-term ranges. And so the yellow projects are funded projects, either being funded by the city of Franklin or being funded through a public-private partnership with a developer. And the red projects are projects that you're considering with your CIP. And what really stands out to me is looking at outside of the two Mac Hatcher projects that desperately need to be done, and Franklin Road project that desperately needs to be done, which are both state routes, is that the growth in the Goose Creek area being a short term, all the infrastructure that is needed out there. Now there's a commitment to do the Long Lane overpass. We're working towards getting more commitments in that area. And then Carruthers Parkway south of 96. The city has approved over 3,000 units in that area, and it's still a 2-lane roadway. And that growth is there and largely developed out, and it's a short-term growth area that we need to continue to invest in that area to support development. Now, the Spencer Creek area, I would say, even though it was rated midterm, I still look at a lot of those projects in the Cool Spring area as supporting existing businesses. And so the, Cool Springs, Mallory, the McEwen Mallory, again, even though that's midterm, those are important projects to do because we're supporting existing businesses. Likewise, the McEwen 4 project, you have a lot of traffic out in the east side of the city that commutes into the Cool Spring, which makes that a very valuable project, and I'm very excited that we're moving forward with it.
And so as we move into CIP discussions, I think it's important that you take that into consideration, because where you invest with the CIP is where we're driving growth. Where does the board want to see us drive growth, and where do we want to support existing development, such as in the Cool Springs area? And so we just kind of wanted to throw this out there to get your feedback. Obviously, the Mac Hatchers are a huge priority, and so is that Franklin Road project, and happy to answer any questions, but this is really time for y'all to discuss.
No questions?
Yeah, I'll have one then. I'll make note that I agree in the southeast has a lot of development needs for things, but there's also 3,500 units in West Haven and the west side of town, and they're still traveling on a 2-lane road to get wherever they're going to a certain degree, until they get to Hillsborough Road or through downtown. So I think that's why I love the priorities we have now, and I know that we're working on trying to find ways to fund them all, because you're right, we need them all. I'm happy to see, though, that some of these in downtown and the Watson Branch, that area, and some of those Cool Springs projects are prioritized, because we can't forget. This is what you hear from citizens. You're growing so fast. You're putting all your money into for the new people and where they're coming. When the roads in some of these legacy areas of town are feeling those impacts too. So while I agree that yes, if it's the most opportune growth area, that we need to be spending money there proactively, but not at the expense of some of the rest of town, which kudos to you and staff for who've come up with this, and BOMA, but I think have a really good balance right now of investing in all parts of town, and I think that's evident in the dispersion of all these projects. I really do think that it's a good breakout. Now we just have to get the state of Tennessee to work with us and rescue Franklin's state roads.
Agree 100%. We're trying to form a mutually beneficial partnership there.
Yes.
Anybody else? We'll be back at 7 o'clock. We're adjourned.